Hi everyone, it's your favourite Atomic Blonde here with my, I keep changing it to Nerdy Weekly Review or Weekly Nerdy Review. Haven't quite settled on the title yet, but it's one of those things. So anyway, as always, I'll be covering the shows I've been watching this week and letting you know what I think. Starting off with For All Mankind. This is the season finale. I always do cover spoilers in these reviews, but I'm going to try not to keep it too spoiler heavy because I do really want people to go watch this show. It's absolutely amazing. What I'm really pleased to say, the same as so we had the Orville finale last week, we've got this finale this week, and I've had two finales that have nailed the landing, which is just brilliant because one thing modern shows don't do well is nail the landing. We always end up with more, plot holes and or just it just sort of finishes and you're like, oh, is that it? Oh, not with this show. Every season we have amazing season finales, and this was no different. So obviously I've spoken about it over the last couple of weeks. Do go back and check those reviews if you want to know about what All Mankind's story is. Basically, as I say, it's a sort of parallel history. America didn't get to the moon first, Russia did. And then that springs out a much bigger space program than we've ever had, and they continue to invest money into the space program to basically beat Russia and any other superpowers. China's coming in the mix. We find out Korea's in the mix in this one. And, to get to places first. And this season has been about getting to Mars. So there's been a number of accidents and incidents along the way. And basically all teams have had to end up being together and working together. The Russians, the Americans from NASA, and a Helios project, which is a tech billionaire funded project, and they're all basically now living together in the same place because they've been to take various incidents. So for everybody to survive, they've had to be together. As a result of this, Ed, who's one of the main characters, has been in it since season 1. He was originally part of the Apollo missions. His adopted daughter Kelly, was on the Helios mission. She was on the NASA mission, but as I said, they've all been together. And she started having a relationship with one of the cosmonauts, who was unfortunately killed a couple of episodes ago. But she basically got pregnant. So obviously it's a sort of political hot potato a bit that because they haven't had glasnost or the cooling of the Cold War that we've experienced. Is still very much Cold War going on in this show. But the whole premise of the finale is that last week Kelly collapsed. She had preeclampsia, and there's a load of issues around her giving birth on Mars because of the gravity. And she has to be able to give birth in normal Earth gravity, so they have to get her up to the Phoenix for that. And obviously she's early, and because of all the issues they've had, they're trying to get more people off the planet than the ship was ever designed to do, because obviously they've got the cosmonauts and the Helios guys and the NASA people, even though a lot of the crew's been killed over various weeks because of the incidents. So they're basically still trying to figure out how to get Kelly up to, or basically at this point, get the crew up to Phoenix so she can give birth. They're still trying to produce enough fuel to be able to do that, and they're running out of time. And with the preeclampsia, it's even more urgent. They're talking days rather than weeks. So back at sort of mission control, you've got a cohort of NASA and the Russian technicians all working on the problem and how they're going to get everybody back. They basically get to a point that they've stripped all they can out of the module to make it lighter so they don't need as much fuel. But the guys are all saying, look, you need to lose another 1,000 pounds to be able to get this thing to fly. Based on the fuel, we've come up with enough projections that you can kind of, get it to a certain point. This is relayed back down to Mars, and basically they kind of do the numbers. There's I think nine of them in total, including Kelly. So basically, if 8 of us don't go, that's roughly about 1,000 pounds, give or take. So they all basically volunteered to stay on Mars, which means they'll be there for another 18 months. And obviously it's not designed for that. But they work it through saying, look, if we restrict rations, we carry on growing food, etc., etc. And they also know that there's potential that they're going to pull the funding for further visits to Mars. So this way they've got to carry on. They've got to come and get them. So obviously Kelly does object to this. She said, I can't leave you guys behind. It's not fair. But obviously, you know, they're all insistent, and like this is the only option for her and her baby to survive. So she agrees. However, so with the amount of fuel when they take off and the sort of velocity and all this kind of thing, they can only get sort of 95% of the way there to Phoenix, and there's obviously the extra 5%. So NASA basically come up with that if she uses, I don't know what the technical term is, but you know, sort of like space packs where they do like spacewalks with the rockets and things, and she's the most experienced and trained person in this, conveniently. So basically, she's like stage 2. So Ed will fly her the 95% way, and then she basically releases, and then with the jet propulsion, will then push her the remaining 5% she needs to get to Phoenix. So that's the plan. The problem there is when he has to use so much fuel and various things to get the velocity to get into orbit, there's not necessarily enough for when he comes back down to then effectively, you know, decrease velocity. And basically he's got to try and figure it out kind of manually, because otherwise he's just going to smack into the surface and be roadkill. So we've got this, and he's working again with NASA, and one of the old characters that they brought back, Molly, who's a fantastic character. She's based on a real lady who worked at NASA. And in this plot line, she used to be a test pilot and an astronaut, but I think it was glaucoma, so she's basically gone blind. And she was sort of working at NASA on the program up until she got fired this season. But basically, Ed trusts her and says, like, what can we come up with? What can I do? I can't trust the readings I'm getting on the machines. And she basically sort of talks him through what he needs to do, and he needs to just focus on the horizon, because the ground will be coming up, there'll be a ground rush, so you can't trust looking down, and you can't trust the numbers you're getting. You just basically focus on the horizon, and when it gets to a certain point, switch off the engines. So they basically mobilize this plan. Again, so this is where I'm not going to get too many spoilers. You're going to have to watch it to find out if they make it or not. But basically, this plan goes into action, and they launch successfully. And I'll leave it at that. Meanwhile, down on the ground, obviously Mission Control's there. They're monitoring all of this. They're obviously trying to help support with the procedure. And it's kind of a subplot, which I haven't really touched on, so I've kind of focused on the core storyline. And again, I want people to go watch this show, so I don't want to tell you everything. But in previous seasons, there's two married couple who are part of the Apollo sort of space program, and then the moon colonizations, Jamestown. And they basically sort of like heroes, and they have 2 sons. One son goes into the space program, Danny. He has his own issues, and he's a sort of oxy addict. And he's on Mars with Ed. And then their other son, who's younger, is quite damaged by his parents' relationship and going into space program and what happens to his parents. Again, I don't say too much because you need to go watch the show. So he kind of gets in with a bit of a bad crowd, and these guys are all anti-government, conspiracy theories. They think the whole moon landing is made up, and basically NASA's taking all this money and they're not actually doing any sort of space exploration. And something happens to his parents in the previous season. And they basically convince him that it's all a cover-up and they're lying, and NASA needs to be taken down. As it goes, there is no cover-up. What happened to his parents happened to his parents. And so it kind of gets in with this crowd, and it's really clear that they're just using him to get access to NASA. He takes like a couple of them in because he can kind of come and go because of his parents. I mean, he still has to sign in, has a visitor's pass and stuff, but you know, he sort of takes them around, shows them what's what. And this culminates to, they're saying they're going to pull a stunt where they're going to kind of, while the camera crews are there, they're going to kind of cut the feed, and they're going to sort of hijack the feed and get their message out and do whatever they feel needs to be said, and we're going to, you know, take down the establishment. So he goes along with this. He goes and plants this sort of trip switch that they've asked him to put in so they can do this. But then as he comes back to the van, he sees one of them zipping up a bag, and it's got like rifles and guns in it. So he's like a bit suspicious, and he's like, you know, something more going on here. he kind of walks off and phones his I think his sister-in-law Amber, and sort of very quickly says, like, there's something going on here at the space station. I don't know who to tell, but need help. Something's got to be done. So he leaves this message. Then this group comes over to him and says, "Oh, what are you doing? Who are you talking to?" And he's like, "Oh, I was just telling Amber I'm going to be late because we're here." And obviously they kind of tweak that he knows something, so they knock him unconscious and put him in the back of the van. Amber then phones Karen, who's Ed's ex-wife. She's like now CEO of Helios, so she's been involved in obviously the space program at various times, and has been very closely involved in the Mars missions. So again, she's there because basically, obviously, Ed is her ex-husband and Kelly's her adopted daughter. She's there to oversee the mission, and obviously make sure, fingers crossed, find out that they make it successfully. And she's seen the kid walking around, but then he's not there, so she goes looking for him. And then she gets a phone call from Amber saying, "I've got this really bizarre message from Danny. Is he there? I don't know what to do." And Karen goes looking for him. And she sort of clocks these people, acts a bit suspiciously. There's all these news vans because they're there for coverage. And she sort of hears this noise coming from a van. She opens it. She finds that it's Danny. Helps him out, and then they realise that the back of the van is just a bomb. It's just a massive bomb. So Danny runs. She tells him to get away. He runs in one direction. Karen runs towards the space center and sees a security guard, and basically like tells the security guard that they've got a bot line to stop this man. But the guy's got a mobile phone, and basically shoots the security guard before the security guard can do anything, and sets off the bomb. And again, I'm not going to give away any spoilers here, but obviously it takes out most of the building. And as you expect with an explosion of that magnitude, people do die. But again, go watch it. You need to find out what happened. So obviously Mars are oblivious to all this happening. This has been taken out. And there's some other storylines running in the background that, again, I haven't really touched on because the reviews would be far too long and I want you to go watch this show. But you've got another character, Margot, who's head of the space program. This amazingly driven lady. She's sort of single. She's completely dedicated to her career. She's had her counterpart sort of in Russia, because we've done various things with the Russians over the years. She kind of got drawn into being blackmailed to help this guy. In this season, she basically helps him defect, him and his family, to the US. But it's kind of unraveled that a girl that works for her realizes at some point that the Russian engines are the same design as the American engines. And she's like, oh, there's got to be a spy. And Margot keeps telling her to let it go. And basically she figures out that it's been Margot, but she doesn't understand why. She doesn't know anything about blackmailing. So she tells another colleague in confidence, I don't know what to do. And rather than them both going to speak to Margot, this guy goes straight to the FBI. So they're investigating Margot. And she's aware of this. And then obviously the bomb explosion. So, and her office is taken out. So again, that sort of leaves a bit of a question mark there. But it does kind of unravel by the end, funny. But again, do go watch and find out the backstory to Margot and her Russian counterpart. Is quite sweet. But yeah, it's kind of heart-wrenching again at the end, just when you think that they're going to get together. And at the very end of this show, it goes to 2003. We've been in the 90s with this series, and that's kind of where it ends. And as I've said, we know there's going to be a season 4, so we guess that's going to kind of pick up from the mid-noughts going forward. We don't know how many more seasons we're going to get. Hopefully a few, which might take us sort of right into our future. Because I reckon this season will probably bring us pretty much up to parallel as to where we are now potentially, or maybe next season. And then going past that, well, what will happen in the future? Will we go past Mars? Will we make first contact? Who knows? But I was really, really pleased with how this season ended. Again, with the bomb and the massive twist, you just didn't see it coming. You knew that these guys that they were with were using him and weren't okay, but the magnitude of what happens, you just didn't see coming at all. The complexities with the relationships with all these characters, and because obviously most of them have known each other for like 30, 40 years because of the space program, and the characters keep evolving and developing. It's just such an engaging show. I just can't recommend it enough. Sort of gutted that I've lost my two favourite sci-fi shows now, The Orville and For All Mankind. So I'm going to start trawling, or hope the streaming channels, and try and find something else to watch. Or hopefully, obviously the new schedules will start coming out, and new shows will start coming up in sort of September, October. So I might have to go back and review some old stuff and do some recommendations on that instead. But please do go check out the show. It's on Apple TV. Like I say, you can normally get a free trial as long as you're an Apple customer, you have an Apple phone or something like that. It's well worth the watch. I absolutely adore this show. Every season it knocks it out the park. Every season has a brilliant season finale. You're always left wanting, and I can't wait for season 4, even though it's just finished. So do check out For All Mankind. So moving on to, obviously, From, that I've been discussing the last few weeks. We're up to episodes 5 and 6 out of 10. The story's still progressing, and we're getting reveals each episode and more sort of complexity to the story. So I'm still enjoying it at this point. I think it's getting to a point where the next few shows need to pick up a little bit. Not massively, because I'm just a bit worried it's going to get almost too many threads of stories and sort of flitting about a bit. But I'm still very much engaged. I'm still very much want to know what the hell is going on. Really enjoying it. So at the end of the last show and sort of start of this one, it starts with, we've got the family of Ethan, Jim, and Tabitha sitting in the diner, I think having breakfast or something. And we've got the waitress, Sarah, who's in this town with her brother Nathan. Nathan looks after the animals and runs the farm for the town. They have like goats and chickens and bits and bobs. So Sarah's standing there, and she looks down at her arm and she's in pain. And it kind of, in raised lettering, sort of a la Exorcist, comes up, kill the boy. So she's in pain with her arm, it says kill the boy, and then she collapses and has this fit. Obviously, everybody rushes over to Sarah because what's on her arm has disappeared, but obviously it looks like she's having some sort of epileptic fit. And obviously she gets moved to the hospital to be checked on. Basically, so when she's at the hospital, she's okay. She says she doesn't really remember what happened. 1 minute she was standing there, next minute she was on the floor. And she's basically advised to go keep her in at the hospital overnight. There's a character, Christy, who basically has a shirt of like an EMT, so she's like a paramedic, but she's their paramedic / doctor because that's the only person with any medical experience. So she sort of says she needs to stay in overnight just so she can monitor and make sure she doesn't have any more fits, which she agrees to do. Obviously, Nathan finds out that she's collapsed. He goes running over to the hospital, but she says she doesn't want to see her brother. And this is more to do with the fact that obviously she's confided in him that she was hearing voices, and that's why she murdered the guy that arrived in the car a couple of weeks ago and removed the talisman, so everybody in the hospital was murdered. So her brother knows this, so he's like freaking out, thinking, is this something to do with this? Is she going to, do something bad again? So, but she basically says, oh, I don't want to see my brother. He's just going to worry too much. He's too overprotective. So basically they stop Nathan from seeing her, but just say, look, she's just resting. Come back in the morning. That's the best thing you can do to help her. So he agrees, but obviously he's really worried about Sarah and what might happen next. Boyd, who's the sheriff, asks us some questions about the fits because obviously Ethan's had a fit and now Sarah's had a fit. And what we've seen over the last couple of episodes is that the sheriff is starting to have like tremors in his hand. And he asked her, could it be a reaction to that place? Could people be getting symptoms of things they wouldn't normally have? And she's very much, well, you know, if you'd asked me this outside of this town, I'd be like, no, but, you know, anything's possible here. Why? And he's like, oh, it's, you know, nothing really to worry about. Or she goes, well, you know, we can do some tests. He goes, no, I think I know what it might already be. And he kind of leaves it at that. The family all go back to the house after the, you know, sort of say, oh, you know, Sarah's going to be okay. The lady looked after you and fixed your legs, going to make sure Sarah's okay. And the dad basically decides, because, you know, this isn't kind of real pain, you know, he needs to do something. So he gives them all marker pens and basically just starts like, okay, right, we've got to figure out where we are. If we don't know where we are, we can't get away. So they just say, we need to get everything down, everything we know, and also what don't we know, what do we need to figure out. So basically he just starts writing on the walls of the house, you know, so where are we, question mark. And then he's writing down all his stuff, and he encourages the kid and his wife to do it. And the kid's like, you know, this is great, you're not allowed to draw on the walls anywhere else kind of thing. So they're writing all this stuff down, trying to figure out what they know. It goes back to the hospital. This is later on in the evening. Sarah's up and she's going through some drawers, and you basically see a scalpel there, and she sort of goes to take the scalpel, but then the doctor walks in with the coffee, and she closes the drawer, and they sort of sit there and just start chatting, and we sort of find out a bit more about the doctor, that she was engaged to a girl in the outside world, and she's just like, you know, she doesn't know if she's still waiting for her. Does she just think she abandoned her? Does she think she's dead? You know, so the girl's kind of exploring, and Sarah explains about her and Nathan, and how Nathan's all she has in the world, and he is her world, and she adores her brother, but he's like very protective of her because she wasn't in a good place in the outside world. Obviously some stuff's happened to her, and her sort of mental health isn't great, so you know, that's why he looks after her. Then Sarah sort of poses a question to the doctor, like, if you had to do something really bad, but it was kind of for the greater good kind of question, if it helped everybody else, would you do it? What would you know? And the doctor's like, you know, what do you mean by this? And do you mean hypothetically? She's, oh yeah, hypothetically, absolutely. I mean, what else would it be? So the doctor's like, well, hypothetically, to do one bad thing to help everybody else, then yeah, I would. And you know, she was saying she'd do anything to get back to her partner, as she would in that situation. Not really obviously understanding what Sarah is getting at, or the gravity of the question. So basically sort of kind of go to the next day. Sarah's up and goes to leave the hospital. Nathan comes running down and meets her and says, you know, what's going on? Are you okay? And she's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. It's nothing to worry about. And he's like, have you been hearing the voices again? She's like, she basically lies to him and says, no, I'm absolutely fine. There's nothing to worry about. I need to get back to work because, you know, the person runs a diner is going to be worried about her. And off she goes. Actually, like, Nathan's kind of like, he knows she's lying to him. So Nathan goes off and goes to find the priest to get some advice about Sarah. And Sarah makes a beeline straight to the family's house. And she comes in, and the mum and dad are there, and Ethan. And she's like, oh, just popped in to say thank you, and I'm okay, and just want you to know that I'm fine, and didn't mean to frighten you. Because she's like really, really good with Ethan. You know, she's good with kids. And, you know, kid being a kid, he's like, hey, do you want to come outside and play and talk? And they're like, oh look, she's just come out of hospital, you know. And she's like, no, it's fine, let's go out. And it's kind of a dirty old rusty merry-go-round thing that they sit on, and they're chatting away, and it's just outside the house. So they're talking about that, and she basically sort of says to Ethan, hey, would you like to come and see the animals, you know, that Nathan looks after? And he's like, yeah, I guess. And just as she sort of says this, the mum comes out and says, hey, like, you know, get off that dirty thing, you know, you don't be sitting on there. And she says, oh, no, it's fine, it's not a problem. And Ethan goes, oh, Sarah said we can go see the animals. So the mum says, oh, I'll come with you. And obviously Sarah's like, no, it's fine, I'll take him. She goes, oh, no, it's no trouble at all. let's all go down. So they walk down to the farm. So obviously Sarah needs to get the mum out of the way, so she sort of spins to this story to say that there's loads of sort of hidden passages and tunnels around the town. So if you're stuck, you're out at after dark at night and you're in trouble, you can get into one of these tunnels and get home. Let me show you where they are. And you can see she looks a little bit skeptical, but you're a bit like, okay. So she sort of takes her into the barn and basically sort of shoves her into an area and locks her in. And she's like, I'm sorry, but you'll thank me later. I'm not sure she's ever going to thank her for trying to kill her son. But anyway, she's like, I've got to do this. And then she goes after Ethan, and she's basically got the scalpel that we saw in her pocket. While this is happening, her brother's actually talking to the priest, and he's like, whatever I tell you, is it like confidential, like a confessional type of thing? He's like, yeah, absolutely. So he basically tells her what Sarah did to the other boy. And not surprisingly, he's like, right, we've got to go find your sister. And he's like, well, I thought it was like, he goes, look, it's confidential, we don't have to say, but we've got to find her. She's dangerous. So they go looking for Sarah. They run into the sheriff and tell him that we've got to find Sarah, and this is what's happened. And they basically find out, or Nathan finds out, that he goes to the diner and says, oh, we saw Sarah with Ethan and the mum heading towards the farm. He runs up to the farm and basically sees Sarah with Ethan with the knife, and she's like saying, I'm sorry, but I've got to do this. This is, I don't want to hurt you, but I've got to do this. So he grabs hold of her. Ethan manages to get away from her, and Nathan just shouts at him to get away. So the kid runs off in tears, not surprisingly. And as he's struggling with his sister, she kind of wriggles out and sort of goes, get off me, and she basically slashes Nathan's throat. And obviously he's on the ground just bleeding out, and it's complete through the neck. She's then devastated. She drops the scalpel. She's trying to help her brother, by which point the priest and some other people have got there. They're trying to help, and the doctor, they're all trying to help Nathan. The priest goes running after Sarah. Ethan basically finds his sister, and he's just in tears. So the sister now picks him up and sort of takes him back into town. And then the priest comes back saying that she's run into the woods. I couldn't keep up with her. The knees aren't what they used to be. And basically the mum and dad kind of meet up with the sister and take Ethan back home. And unfortunately, Nathan dies. The doctor blames herself. She said, well, she asked me this question. And they were like, well, you went to know what she was getting at. While all this has been happening, the character that was introduced, Jade, who's the friend of the guy that was murdered, who was like high as a kite, it comes out that basically he's some sort of tech wizard, and he's just sold his company or his software or something for millions of dollars. So he's quite an arrogant arse who just sort of goes around being quite rude to people. He just finds people irritating because no one's as clever as he is. And when he's gone around, he's like been in the sheriff's office and he hears this noise on the radio, and they go, oh, it does that sometimes, but we can't get anything on it. And he basically takes the radio and storms off. He finds out they've got a bar in the town, and so he gives you this like moonshine potato vodka that would probably send you blind. But he's sort of feeling sorry for himself, and the guy, and he's like, belittling everybody else, and you're all just sitting here doing nothing, and you're just accepting your fate. So he goes, well, if you're so clever, then you do something, you get that working, and you get us out of here, and sort of sets in the challenge. And he goes, right, and he sort of picks up the radio, and off he goes. And I think that's pretty much the end of the episode. Oh, the other thing that happened was Boyd at one point says he's going to go visit his wife, which is his wife's grave. He goes out to the grave, which is a little bit outside of town. And he's talking to her. And when he was talking to the doctor about the tremors, he basically sort of says that, I think it started. And basically what happens is his dad had Parkinson's. And he's like, even though he was told it's not hereditary, he really shouldn't worry about it. The fact that he's pretty much starting to get the tremors at the same age his father did, and he's sort of saying this is his wife in the grave. And he's like, if it's true, then I'm running out of time to get everybody out of here. I've got a plan, but it's dangerous. I really don't know what to do. You're always good at this stuff. You sort of cut through the crap and, help, would make decisions kind of thing. And he's like, I just really, really need a sign from you. And he's come across that, he's not a religious person or anything like that, but he's at this point, he goes, I just really need some help. I don't know what to do. So when he's in the diner talking to the doctor about it's not your fault, don't worry about it, they have these little mini jukeboxes on each of the tables. And we've seen in previous episode, every now and again, they just come on and start playing a tune. And this song comes on that he knows. I'm guessing it must be like his and his wife's song or something like that. And he just goes, oh, that's my sign. And that's kind of the end of episode 5. Episode 6, we have some really intriguing stuff happen. So there's sort of two threads happening in this episode. One is that Tabitha goes to see the priest and sort of says to the priest, are we in, did we survive the crash? Are we in some sort of hell or purgatory or limbo? And he's like, I'm sure a lot of people ask you this question. And he's like, and he gives her this answer, and she's like, he goes, well, I've had a lot of time to think about it and answer this question several times. But he says to her, which is really good, well, you came to the town before the accident, so you're alive. It's not like you arrived at the town after the accident. You're in the town, you left the town, and then you had the accident. So I can assure you that you're alive. And she kind of takes that and says, okay. And then there's all these handwritten Bible passages. And she said, did you write these? And he's like, yeah, they're all memorized. And what you find out is there's not a single Bible in the whole of the town anywhere. So you're kind of like, oh, okay. So, that's unusual. At least one person will have a Bible, especially in these sort of small southern towns. So they basically discover that. Then when Tabitha leaves, the priest goes down, goes into the basement, and lo and behold, he's got Sarah there tied to a chair, gagged. Not very priestly behavior. And basically he talks to her and asks her about the voices and what were they saying, because obviously he knows about this from Nathan, and he ungags her, and she explains what the voices said, that if she killed the boy, everybody could go home, and they've just been waiting for someone to come that could hear the voices, because not everybody can hear the voices. And she makes a comment about that the voices saw him when he arrived and he buried the bag. And he's like, what are you talking about? Look, I need to know that this is real, what the voice is saying. So she says that we know that you buried the bag, and she's drawing something on a piece of paper. And he's like, what is that? And she's like, I don't know, but this is what they're telling me to give you. And you can see the look of, like, not fear, but kind of shock on his face that maybe there is some truth to all this, or what these voices are, which kind of freaks him out, unsurprisingly. Boyd is sort of thinking that something's changing in the village, since his family arrived and they were able to take the talisman out into wood, and they were able to stay in the RV. So he's culminating this plan whether he goes further out into the woods where they've ever gone before after hearing this song. That's his sign to try and figure out how to get people out. So he talks to the deputy about, I'm planning on going into the woods with a talisman and see what I can find, or find a way out. And the kid kind of flips out, Kenny, because his father was murdered in the hospital when Sarah removed the talismans. So he's just lost his father. He's not in a good place. And he basically just flips out at the sheriff, saying, like, basically, have you got some sort of death wish? Just like, I'm not coming with you. Why would you do this now? Kind of thing. And Boyd's a bit taken aback by it. We then cut to the house with the family, and the dad's sitting there with like some wire. He's going to rewire something, and basically he sort of says, "Does this look strange to you?" And she's like, there's no wire. He goes, there's no wire in any of the cables, even though they have electricity. So the lamps are on, they can cook and things. So he goes, well, where's the power coming from if there's no wire in the wires? And they find that, like, really, obviously, like, well, this is really strange. as again, we're starting to get sort of layers of more sort of questions than answers. And later on in the show, basically, Jim's gone out to try and figure some out, and you see Jade now going around sort of taking aerials of cars and stripping car parts and things like that, because obviously no one's going anywhere, to try and do something with this radio so he can get them out of there. Runs into Jim. Jim was an engineer, so he ends up sort of helping him, and they go off. And back at the house, so Tabitha basically pushes his dresser out of the way with Ethan, and they get hammers and they just start knocking down the wall to try and figure out the wiring and where does the wiring go, so they can figure out where's the power coming from. So she starts dismantling that. So Jim and Jade are kind of gone out into a field and sort of found the tallest tree they could find. And Jim's climbing the tree to get the antenna up to try not to get a radio signal. Again, Jade's just being really rude and obnoxious, and Jim sort of basically tells him to shove it. And he apologizes, and they sort of crack on and stuff. And then Jade's standing at the bottom of the tree, and you sort of see this liquid running down the tree, and he puts his hand on it, it's blood. And then he looks up, and there's all these dead bodies hanging from the tree, all sort of brutalized. And of course, he like freaks out. And then there's an American Civil War ghost, for lack of a better word, guy comes running towards him. He goes running into the wood, falls down, and basically the Civil War guy sort of stabs him with a bayonet, but then just disappears, and he's on the ground freaking out, screaming. I was supposed to, but Jim's kind of like come down and found him and goes, like, what's wrong? And what are you seeing? It's not real. And Jade just like flips out and runs off. Jim goes back to the tree and sort of does some Mayday stuff, sort of tries, but nothing comes back. So eventually you sort of see him going back towards the house. At the house at this point, the wife now, Tabitha, is like digging up the floor. There's buckets of mud, and the kids carrying buckets of dirt out. And she finds she carries on looking, and she doesn't. So earlier on, she'd cleared out some of the previous owners' stuff, and for some reason, there's like storage at the diner. So she takes the box to the diner and leaves it there, and she sees a bracelet on the side which she appears to recognize, and she picks it up and takes it. And then so back at the house, when Jim arrives, he sees Ethan carrying all these buckets of dirt. He's like, what the hell's going on? And he's, I'm helping Mum like clear out this stuff. And so he goes and finds her. She's digging this massive hole, and he's like, what are you doing? And she's like, trying to find where the power comes from. But she sort of then explains, I found this, and hands him the bracelet. And he's like, oh, okay. And he goes, that looks like one I used to have. And she goes, no, it is the one you used to have. And he's like, that's impossible. I lost this when Julie was born. And she's like, I know, because it basically transpires she made it for him. She made it out of her dad's bootlaces. And there's like a little bit of an imperfection on the bootlaces. And she sort of, when she made it for him, she sort of said, oh, so it's not perfect. And he sort of makes a comment about imperfections, make perfections or something. And this imperfection's on there. So they both like realize that this is the same bracelet, but how on earth has it got there if he lost it in the real world? Sort of gives Julie's age 16, 17 years ago. So that's kind of where this episode ends. Oh, there was one other thing with Jade. When he runs off, he starts seeing this symbol in his head, and he goes to the diner and he's just drawing the symbol over and over again. And the lady that runs the diner sees it, and she doesn't speak much English. She's Kenny's mum, and basically she takes him back into the storage room, and she's looking for something, and then she finds a diary or journal type thing, and in there someone who's obviously previously lived in the town has drawn the same symbol over and over again. So we don't know what this symbol is, why he's seeing it. So we don't know why they've got electricity, because it doesn't appear to be possible because there's no wires in the wires. And this bracelet's turned up, and we know we've got these voices going on. Oh, and the priest goes and digs up this bag that the voices alluded to. And when he opens the bag, there's a shirt, it's like a priest shirt, but it's covered in blood. I think it's some like whiskey, and then there's like a bar of chocolate. And the picture on the front of the chocolate is the picture that the girl drew when she was hearing the voices. So we're now sort of seeing that something's obviously happened to the priest. Why has he got a bloody shirt in his bag? So something dodgy happened before he got there. We don't know. But is it going to be like him and Sarah sort of forming some sort of alliance around these voices? And are the voices good or are the voices bad? You assume that they're bad because they want the boy dead, and the boy can see the little boy in white, who we don't know is a ghost or whether he's good or bad. So it's really starting to unravel lots and lots of clues along the way and sort of putting layers of confusion in. So as I said, I'm still really enjoying it. I'm just hoping they're not trying to put too much stuff into it, or too much stuff in that really annoys me when you get all these plot points and then they never get resolved because they just forget that they've written something. Is the bracelet relevant or not relevant? Are we ever going to find out why the bracelet is there? Who knows? So anyway, I'm sticking with it for now. So we've got episodes 7 and 8 coming up this week. So again, to catch that review, check it out next week. But for now, carry on checking out From. I'm still enjoying it, and I have heard there is going to be a season 2. So for now, worth sticking with. The next one I watched this week actually isn't a show in that sense. It's a documentary. It's called Light and Magic. It's on Disney Plus, and it's the story of Industrial Light and Magic and how that was created and how it's evolved pretty much up until the point that George Lucas sold it. And they've got loads of interviews with the founders of Industrial Light and Magic, including George Lucas. There's Steven Spielberg's in the mix. There's also James Cameron, because obviously Industrial Light and Magic worked on his films and Terminator films, etc. So if you're into sort of the behind the scenes stuff, and obviously it's incredibly nerdy and geeky, and all these interviews about the people that, done all the effects on the Star Wars films and how they came up with them, the things they did and how they were just basically winging it, and nobody really knew what they were doing, and how it's like, that literally from little acorns, how this amazing business grew. And it sort of goes from the creation in the 70s through to the 80s and all the modeling workshops and how it's all, actual effects and models and all those kind of things, going through to the 90s when CGI started to come in, and the CGI teams, and obviously Jurassic Park was the big breakthrough there, and hence why Spielberg's involved, because Light and Magic obviously worked on that, but worked on the Indiana Jones films and most of these big films, including things he was producers on, like Poltergeist, that shows you how they've done that, the house imploding and things like that. I found it incredibly interesting. I love all that kind of stuff. And it was a kind of warts and all, really. There was they're very, very honest about the starts of the company and when people got fired or there were disagreements and things like that. And I say George Lucas is involved in the documentary. And I think it was really nice to see something from Disney Plus where they're actually celebrating George Lucas and his achievements and his legacy, sort of rather than crapping all over it. Unfortunately, Kathleen Kennedy does get her mug in there. Again, why? She always has to take credit for stuff that's got absolutely nothing to do with her. That is the only down, but she's in pretty much the last couple of episodes and she's not in it that much. But they do sort of talk about Mandalorian and things like that. She sort of gets a roar in. But that aside, she is respectful on camera about George Lucas and his achievements. But 6 episodes. So, if you've got a bit of time or, a lazy Sunday afternoon, massively love this show. If you're into the behind the scenes stuff and how things were done, it's a fantastic documentary. It was made this year, so it's bang up to date. I know there's been some other documentaries. I thought it was one I'd seen before actually about this, but it's not. There's all the different interviews of pretty much, I think anybody who's still alive is in this documentary in terms of, talking about what happened and, they talk about all 3 Star Wars films. If you're a Star Wars fan, as I said, they talk about The Abyss and Terminator, Poltergeist, Indiana Jones. I mean, you kind of name it, Industrial Light and Magic were kind of involved in it. and then talked about how, you know, how the sort of family sort of broke up and they sort of spun off into different companies and how people were leaving. And then obviously the sort of revolution of CGI eventually, you know, pretty much removed the actual models and the modeling teams, and you know, had the opportunity to retrain and learn how to do that. But a lot of people, you know, it wasn't what they wanted to do. That's why I say it's a bit warts and all. It's very, very honest from everybody. Massively enjoyed it. Like I say, if you're into that sort of geeky stuff, again, do go check it out. It's on Disney Plus, called Light and Magic. So that's pretty much it for this week in terms of TV. I obviously have watched The Sandman. There's a separate in-depth review, spoiler review on the channel. So if you want to know what I thought in depth of The Sandman, go watch that. Very sort of clip notes. It was okay. I quite liked it. It's very true to the source material. There were some things I didn't like about it, and that's in my video. I think if you're into Neil Gaiman, sort of fantasy sci-fi, that sort of style and pace of writing that Neil Gaiman does, I think you'll like it. You know, some people do have some issues around the casting, and it is a much lighter version. It's not as dark as the source material, but I thought it was okay. It was watchable. I wasn't blown away by it. I mean, the CGI and the world building is great. It probably just wasn't dark enough for me personally, but I would recommend people watching it. But yeah, for all the pros and cons, do go watch my video on The Sandman, and you'll know what I think about all the different casting choices and how they've built the story out and what they've left in and what they've taken out. So do enjoy that one. That's pretty much it this week. As I say, we're kind of getting to that time of year where things are starting to conclude. I'm hoping some new shows. If not, I'm going to have to do some reviews of some oldies but goldies to recommend to you. If there's anything you'd like me to review, just put it in the comments and I will take a look. If I've got access to that show, I will do that. At the moment, because I'm new to all of this, I don't have a VPN, so if something's on in the States only, I won't have access to that. But hopefully in the future, if the channel takes off, I can start splurging on VPNs, and I've already got so many shows I need to watch. But do let me know if there's anything you'd like me to review, or my thoughts on any films coming out or trailers. Happy to take a look. So as always, please like, share, subscribe. Do leave some comments. Quite happy for criticism as long as it's constructive. Let me know what you like, what you don't like, and I will see you next week. Bye.